The crisp autumn sun settled over the University of Toronto campus, casting long golden rays across the sprawling green lawns and modern academic buildings. Students moved briskly across the plaza, earbuds in, coffee cups in hand, and backpacks bouncing against their shoulders. Conversations in various languages blended into a low hum, punctuated by the occasional laugh or shout from someone late for class. Near the edge of the plaza, close to a cluster of maple trees whose leaves had begun turning fiery shades of orange and red, a small pop-up stand caught the eye. On a simple wooden table sat a neat array of homemade baked goods, cinnamon buns, chocolate chip cookies, and maple-glazed pastries. A handwritten sign, slightly crooked but legible, read, "Sophie Carter's Snacks, freshly made, support your studies." Behind the stand, Sophie Carter stood with a tidy ponytail, her warm scarf wrapped snugly around her neck. She was a third-year finance student, petite but determined, with an intensity in her brown eyes that hinted at her relentless dedication. Her hands moved quickly as she arranged her baked goods, making sure each pastry looked inviting. Sophie had been selling snacks on campus for almost a year, trying to fund her tuition and living expenses. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and she was proud of it. "Cinnamon buns, freshly baked, only $4 each," she called, her voice clear over the ambient chatter of the courtyard. A group of students lingered, scanning the table. One of them, a tall boy with tousled blonde hair and a casual hoodie, scoffed. $4? I can get these at the grocery store for $3. Why should I pay extra?" Sophie tilted her head slightly, a polite but firm look on her face. "Because I baked them myself and brought them here. It saves you a long walk to the store, and my effort counts for something." Another student snickered. "Effort? It's just a cinnamon bun, not a physics lab experiment." Sophie smiled faintly, though her cheeks warmed. "Effort is effort. If you don't want to pay, that's fine. But don't dismiss it. Everyone's time and work are valuable." The blonde boy rolled his eyes, but Sophie's friend, Lily Thompson, a cheerful classmate majoring in communications, nudged him teasingly. "Come on, Jeremy, leave her alone. She's been standing here since 6 this morning." Jeremy muttered something under his breath and walked away, leaving a few students lingering to examine the pastries. Sophie exhaled quietly, relieved the confrontation had ended. Just then, the low murmur of the crowd shifted. Conversations paused as a sharply dressed young man approached the stand, moving with a confidence that seemed innate, almost magnetic. Broad-shouldered, with a tailored navy blazer, crisp white shirt, and dark slacks, he exuded an effortless charm. Every eye seemed to follow him as he walked, though he appeared only mildly aware of the attention. Connor Hayes. Connor was new to the university, a transfer student rumored to be the son of a tech billionaire from Vancouver. He wasn't flashy, but his presence carried weight. He stopped at Sophie's stand, his dark green eyes scanning the pastries. "What's happening here?" His voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of authority, almost like he expected to be obeyed. Sophie straightened, trying to keep her composure. "Just students arguing about the price," she said, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Connor's lips quirked into a faint, amused smile. $4, huh? That's bold." Sophie's brown eyes met his. "It's more than just the price. It's my effort. I don't need to justify myself, but if you want a snack, I hope you respect that effort." Connor's eyebrows rose slightly. "Respect effort, huh? Let's see if I can do that." He reached into his pocket and produced a crisp $20 bill, placing it gently on the table. "I'll take 2 cinnamon buns." Sophie blinked. "Just like that? No haggling?" "No haggling," Connor replied, his voice smooth, yet something in his tone suggested genuine interest rather than just playful teasing. Sophie handed him 2 buns, her fingers brushing his briefly. The spark was instant and undeniable. Her heart skipped a beat, though she quickly forced herself to focus on the transaction. "Thanks," Connor said lightly, pocketing the buns. Then, as if remembering something, he looked back at her with a curious glint in his eyes. "You do this every day?" "Yes," Sophie replied. "I bake, I sell, I do what I can to cover tuition and living expenses. Not glamorous, but it works." Connor's smirk softened into a smile that was equal parts amusement and admiration. "Funding your studies with snacks. That's impressive. Most students my age are worried about parties or internships." Sophie shrugged, feeling a flicker of pride. "Everyone has to find a way to make it work. Some just have to be a little more creative." Connor studied her for a moment longer, and Sophie caught herself wondering if he could see right through her exhaustion, her determination, and something more vulnerable that she didn't usually show to anyone. A student nearby whispered to his friend, clearly impressed, "Wow, she's selling snacks, and he's paying full price? That never happens." Sophie glanced around, slightly embarrassed, and returned to arranging her pastries. Connor lingered, unbothered by the curious onlookers. "You're organized, efficient, and polite," Connor said after a pause, almost like he were noting qualities in a ledger. "That's rare." Sophie tilted her head, unsure how to respond. Compliments weren't something she received often, especially not from someone like him. "Thanks," she murmured. "Name's Connor Hayes," he added, extending a hand. "Sophie Carter," she said, shaking it, her palm tingling slightly at his firm grip. As he walked away, his attention elsewhere, Sophie found herself watching him, a strange flutter in her chest. She didn't know him, had no reason to be interested in him, and yet there was something magnetic about the way he moved, the way he seemed to notice even the smallest details. Lily leaned over, whispering conspiratorially, "Careful, Sophie. He's rich. Don't let him overpay next time." Sophie laughed softly, shaking her head. "I'm not sure he overpaid. He just seems interested." Lily raised an eyebrow. "Interested in buns or you?" Sophie rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at her lips. "Let's just say he's intrigued." For the rest of the morning, Sophie sold her snacks steadily, but every few minutes she found herself glancing at Connor, wondering what he was thinking, what his life was like, and whether he'd come back. When he finally did, it was with a different air, a casual confidence, but there was a purpose in his steps now. "2 more buns," he said, placing exact change on the table. Sophie raised an eyebrow. "You're really committed to this, huh?" Connor chuckled softly. "I like to follow through, and I like seeing people who work hard for what they want." Sophie felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Not everyone appreciates it," she said quietly. "Not everyone's worth noticing," Connor replied, with a smile that hinted at something deeper, something unspoken between them. The crowd of students watching murmured, and a few nudged each other knowingly. Some were curious, some amused, and some whispered rumors that would likely spread through the university by the next week. But for Sophie and Connor, the world narrowed to that small snack stand, the scent of fresh cinnamon, and the unspoken electricity in the air. By the time the morning bell rang, signaling the start of classes, the connection between them was unmistakable. Neither spoke of it directly, but an invisible thread had tied them together, fragile yet undeniable. Connor walked away with his pastries, and Sophie returned to her stand, her heart still fluttering, the taste of the unexpected lingering like sugar on her fingers. And just like that, amidst cinnamon buns, autumn leaves, and the chatter of campus life, a spark was born, instant, unspoken, and powerful enough to set the stage for everything that would follow. It was late afternoon at the University of Toronto, and the campus had settled into that peculiar rhythm when classes were ending, but most students were lingering, either in libraries, cafes, or chatting in the courtyards. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant maple syrup, mingling with the aroma of roasted coffee beans from nearby shops. Sophie Carter, still energized from her morning at the snack stand, hurried to her finance class, clutching a notebook full of scribbles about corporate bonds and investment strategies. Meanwhile, across campus, Connor Hayes was pacing in front of the large glass windows of the business school building. His mind, however, was far from accounting formulas or case studies. He kept replaying the morning encounter, the way Sophie's eyes sparkled with determination, the subtle curl of her smile when he complimented her effort, and the brief, unexpected brush of their hands. It was unlike anything he had felt before. Connor was used to attention. He'd grown up in the public eye, had countless peers vying for his time, and had never needed to go out of his way to impress anyone. Yet Sophie was different. She didn't act impressed by his wealth or status, and that intrigued him more than he cared to admit. He wasn't the type to shy away from challenges, and that was exactly how the idea hit him. A bet. Inside the student lounge, Connor found his best friend, Lucas Morgan, a fellow business major with a knack for mischief and strategic thinking. Lucas was tall, with sandy blonde hair and glasses that constantly slipped down his nose, giving him the appearance of a mischievous professor. "Lucas," Connor started, leaning against the polished countertop, "I need a bet." Lucas looked up from his phone, eyebrows raised. "A bet? With who? Another finance quiz? Or are you gambling with your dad's stocks again?" Connor shook his head, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Not stocks, not money. A bet. With a girl." Lucas's eyes sparkled. "Oh, now we're talking. Spill it." Connor leaned closer. "There's this girl, Sophie Carter. She sells snacks on campus. She's sharp, independent, hard-working, and I want her to agree to have a meal with me." Lucas tilted his head. "You mean ask her out? Straight up?" "Exactly," Connor replied. "But here's the twist. I'm making it a bet. If I can get her to agree for the next 3 days, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. If I fail, I call you Dad." Lucas blinked. Then, after a pause, he laughed so hard he almost fell off his stool. "Dad? Seriously? That's brutal." "Okay, I accept. But why are you doing it this way? Just ask her out like a normal person." Connor shook his head. "This isn't about normal. I want to see if I can truly capture her interest, earn it. Plus, a little competition makes life more interesting." Lucas grinned, leaning back. "All right, man. Consider me your referee. Who's going first, and when do we start?" Connor checked his watch. "Tomorrow morning. I'll approach her at her snack stand again. You set the rules. No cheating, no using wealth as a shortcut." Lucas smirked. "Oh, this is going to be fun. Remember, Sophie isn't your average student. She's smart, determined, and stubborn. If you try to impress her with money, she'll run the other way." Connor's green eyes glimmered. "I know. That's why I'm doing it right. Honestly, no shortcuts." The next morning arrived colder than the day before. Sophie had already set up her stand when Connor approached, his leather shoes clicking against the pavement. She glanced up, and their eyes met. Sophie's expression was polite but guarded. "Good morning," Connor said lightly. "I hope I'm not disturbing your entrepreneurial efforts." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "I suppose not. You're back." Connor nodded, smiling faintly. "I'm here for a reason." Sophie folded her arms, intrigued. "Oh? And what might that be?" Lucas, hiding behind a nearby tree, whispered into his phone, broadcasting through a discreet Bluetooth earpiece. "Okay, Connor, remember the rules. Make it genuine, or you lose. Approach her like a peer, not a billionaire." Connor inhaled slowly. "Sophie, would you have a meal with me? I want to get to know you better. No games, no gimmicks, just a genuine meal." Sophie blinked, momentarily thrown off by the straightforwardness of the request. Most boys her age either ignored her or tried to impress her with flashy words. But Connor's approach was different. It carried sincerity. I don't think so, Sophie said finally, shaking her head. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in lunch dates right now. Connor's smile didn't falter. Fair enough. I respect that. Sophie felt a strange mixture of relief and curiosity. You're different from most people who try to talk to me. Why? Connor shrugged. I notice effort. And I notice people who work hard for what they want. You're remarkable in a quiet way. Sophie's cheeks warmed. Remarkable? That's unexpected. Connor leaned slightly forward, his voice softer now. I'm not asking for a yes today. Just consider it. I think you're worth knowing. Sophie hesitated, looking down at the pastries she had carefully arranged. I'll think about it. Good enough, Connor said with a small, knowing smile, stepping back. He gave her a respectful nod and walked away, but not too far. He lingered near the edge of the plaza, watching discreetly, waiting for her reaction. Later that afternoon, Sophie's friends gathered in the library, whispering conspiratorially. Lily leaned closer. Sophie, I saw him. He's serious, you know, and, well, he didn't seem like someone who takes rejection lightly. Sophie shook her head, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. He's nice. But I can't just agree to a meal because he asked. I have to focus on school, on work, on everything else. Lily smirked. Sure, but admit it. You're curious, right? You want to know why he's so interested. Sophie's lips pressed into a thin line. Maybe, but that doesn't mean I'll give him what he wants. I won't compromise myself. Meanwhile, Lucas monitored the entire scenario, speaking softly into his earpiece. Connor. She's intrigued. Not sold, but curious. That's perfect. Now, next move, be patient. Let her come to her own conclusion. Make her feel respected. Connor nodded subtly, though no one could see him. He knew this wasn't a game of power or wealth. It was a game of subtle influence, of showing authenticity and sincerity. For the next 3 days, Connor would find himself near the snack stand at various times, sometimes with a casual wave, sometimes offering quiet conversation about campus life, textbooks, or random trivia. Sophie noticed, but she remained vigilant. She didn't want to give him the satisfaction of thinking she was easily swayed. Yet every interaction chipped away at her resolve. Connor's calm confidence, his respect for her boundaries, and the simple fact that he listened, truly listened, made Sophie reconsider the world she had built around herself, one that prioritized independence, financial survival, and emotional detachment. By the 3rd day, the campus was buzzing. Students whispered about Connor Hayes and Sophie Carter. A small crowd of onlookers, curious and entertained, began gathering near the snack stand. Sophie felt a mix of irritation and amusement. She didn't want to be part of a spectacle, yet she couldn't deny the subtle thrill of being noticed for who she was. Finally, after a long pause, Connor approached once more. Sophie, I won't ask again unless you want me to. But, if you're willing, dinner with me is still on the table. No games, no gimmicks. Just you and me. Sophie exhaled, staring into his steady green eyes. Her heart raced, but she managed a small, resolute smile. All right. One dinner, but only because I want to know why you're really here. Not because you're rich, not because you're famous, just because you asked. Connor's grin was subtle but triumphant. That's all I ask. One dinner. That's the start. As the campus buzzed around them, Sophie returned to her pastries, still skeptical but intrigued. Connor walked away briefly, already plotting how to keep the momentum without pressuring her. After all, the bet was on, and he had 3 days to prove sincerity, not power. The spark had been lit. The game had begun. The University of Toronto campus was alive with the golden hues of early autumn. Maple leaves drifted lazily across the cobblestone paths, and the soft breeze carried the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries from nearby cafes. Students hustled between classes, some laughing with friends, others buried in their laptops or smartphones. Sophie Carter, ever diligent, stood behind her modest snack stand tucked near one of the quieter quadrangles. Today, Sophie had prepared an assortment of baked goods and beverages: cookies, muffins, granola bars, and bottles of fresh lemonade. Every item was arranged meticulously. Each had a price that reflected not only its cost, but also the time and effort Sophie put into producing it. This wasn't just about making a few dollars to fund her tuition. It was about proving to herself that she could succeed independently. Connor Hayes arrived shortly after, as he had done for the past 2 days. But today was different. Today, he carried a small, unassuming notebook tucked neatly under his arm. He approached the stand with the quiet confidence of someone used to commanding attention without needing to announce it. "Morning, Sophie," Connor said lightly, smiling as he set down the notebook on the counter. Sophie looked up, her green eyes sharp and calculating. "Morning, Connor. Back again?" she asked, trying to sound nonchalant. Connor nodded. "Yes, I thought I'd stop by. Maybe we could talk more." Sophie's lips pressed into a thin line. She had already warned herself not to let him or anyone break her focus. She had bills to pay, tuition to cover, and dreams that didn't involve relying on someone else's wealth. "Talk about what?" she asked cautiously, her tone polite but distant. Connor placed the notebook in front of her and opened it. Inside were handwritten notes, sketches of business ideas, and strategies for investing small amounts of money, a clear attempt to connect over something meaningful. "I thought we could discuss something practical, a little about finance, investing, life skills, stuff that might be useful," he said, his voice earnest. Sophie glanced at the pages, impressed despite herself. She could see the effort he had put into understanding something that mattered to her, yet she still felt a wall rising between them. "I appreciate it, Connor, really, but I don't have time for this," she said, gesturing at the notebook. "I have work to do, classes to attend. I can't just sit and chat." Connor's smile didn't waver. He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice to a softer, almost conspiratorial tone. "I'm not asking for forever. Just a meal. One. To get to know each other. That's it." Sophie took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had anticipated this moment, the moment when he would try to push past her polite refusals. She had to stay firm, not just for herself, but to maintain the independence she had fought so hard to build. "Connor, I can't. I'm sorry. I really can't." Connor's eyes, however, betrayed no hint of frustration. Instead, there was a calm patience that Sophie found unsettling. Most people would have reacted with disappointment, maybe even irritation. But Connor remained poised, respectful, and persistent in a way that wasn't aggressive. "Why not?" he asked gently, leaning back slightly but keeping his gaze on her. Sophie's hands twitched slightly as she arranged the baked goods, buying herself time to formulate an answer. "Because I have priorities," she said finally. "My studies, my work, my life. I won't make time for distractions right now. I hope you understand." Connor nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "I do," he said sincerely. "I just hope that someday you might reconsider. I don't want to pressure you, Sophie. I respect your independence." Sophie blinked, momentarily disarmed. She had expected persistence, maybe even arrogance, but not this level of respect. "Thank you," she said softly, almost to herself. "That means something." Over the next few days, Connor respected her boundaries, but he didn't disappear entirely. He would occasionally wave from a distance, drop a friendly greeting, or leave small, thoughtful notes about campus events, books, or study tips. Each gesture was subtle, non-intrusive, but persistent enough to make Sophie aware of him without feeling cornered. Meanwhile, on the campus itself, whispers began to circulate. Students noticed the quiet exchanges between the billionaire's heir and the diligent snack-selling student. Some were intrigued, others skeptical, and a few outright gossiped about the budding connection. In the library, Sophie sat with her closest friends, Lily and Marcus, during a study session. Lily leaned closer, whispering conspiratorially, "Sophie, you're making it obvious, you know. Connor Hayes doesn't usually get turned down like that." Sophie rolled her eyes, trying to hide her slight flush. "I'm not making it obvious. I'm just focused on school." Marcus, ever the pragmatist, raised an eyebrow. "Focused, huh? Or maybe you're curious. Admit it, you want to see what he's really about." Sophie huffed, half amused, half annoyed. "Curious, yes, but that doesn't mean I'll give in to him or anyone else. I have my own path to follow." Despite her assertions, Sophie couldn't deny a certain flutter in her chest whenever Connor's green eyes found hers across the campus. There was something genuine about him, something she hadn't experienced with anyone else. Most people her age either ignored her or saw her only as someone struggling to make ends meet. But Connor, he noticed her effort, her intelligence, her determination. One afternoon, Connor approached her stand with a small, wrapped package. Sophie raised an eyebrow, curious but cautious. "What's this?" she asked, taking the package reluctantly. "Nothing fancy," Connor said, smiling warmly. "Just a little something for your hard work, no strings attached. Consider it a token of respect." Sophie unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small, handmade notebook, similar to the ones she used to jot down her financial calculations and ideas. On the first page, a single line was written in neat handwriting, "For the girl who doesn't compromise her dreams." Sophie's heart skipped a beat. She looked up, meeting Connor's gaze. Why this?" she asked softly. Connor shrugged, his expression sincere. "Because I see you, and I admire what you're doing. That's all. No ulterior motives." For the first time, Sophie felt a crack in her carefully maintained armor. She realized that this wasn't about him trying to win her over with wealth or charm. It was about genuine recognition. Someone saw her effort, her struggle, and respected it. But Sophie remained firm. "Connor, I appreciate it, really, but I can't. I need to focus on school. That's my priority." Connor nodded once more. "I understand. I'll respect your decision. But I'll be here, not to push, just to support, if you ever need it." That small gesture, simple, respectful, patient, was unlike anything Sophie had encountered before. And though she didn't admit it to anyone, a seed of trust, and perhaps something more, had been planted. The days passed, and the campus buzzed with speculation. Friends whispered about the dynamic between Connor and Sophie. Lily, ever the instigator, couldn't resist teasing her friend. "Come on, Sophie, don't tell me you're not a little intrigued. He's persistent, respectful, and clearly interested. Admit it. You're curious." Sophie shook her head, though a small smile tugged at her lips. "Curious? Yes. But I'm not giving him the satisfaction of thinking I'm easy to win over." Yet even as she spoke, Sophie couldn't deny the subtle thrill that accompanied Connor's presence. the way he respected her boundaries yet remained genuinely interested. It was a new experience, and she found herself thinking about him more often than she cared to admit. Connor, for his part, remained patient. He understood that Sophie's independence was non-negotiable. And so, the initial rejection was not a failure, but the beginning of something deeper. A slow, deliberate dance of mutual respect, attraction, and curiosity. The University of Toronto's campus was buzzing more than usual that Friday afternoon. The golden autumn sun cast warm light on the red and orange maple leaves scattered along the cobblestone walkways. Students hurried to and from classes, laptops clutched to their chests, and coffee cups swinging in hand. But amidst the usual academic hustle, one particular story had captured the attention of nearly everyone in the finance and business faculties. The ongoing dynamic between Sophie Carter, the diligent snack-selling student, and Connor Hayes, the charismatic billionaire heir. It all began quietly, with students noticing small exchanges, Connor lingering near Sophie's snack stand, leaving brief notes, or lending a helping hand when she struggled with her trays. At first, most dismissed it as campus curiosity. Connor was wealthy, charming, and used to being noticed. Sophie was focused, diligent, and seemingly impervious to flattery. But as days passed, whispers began to grow louder. Lily Thompson, Sophie's best friend and closest confidant, sat with Sophie and Marcus Reynolds in the common lounge of the student center. Their table overlooked the main quad, where students passed by in droves. Lily, unable to contain herself, leaned forward, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Sophie, you really are impossible," Lily whispered, trying not to draw attention. Sophie, engrossed in her finance textbook, barely looked up. "I'm impossible?" she replied flatly. "Yes, Connor Hayes has been dropping by for days, leaving you little notes, and you ignore him like it's nothing. Everyone's talking about it." Lily's grin widened, clearly enjoying Sophie's discomfort. Marcus snorted, shaking his head. "Honestly, Lily, I don't know why you're so obsessed. He's Connor Hayes. He can have any girl on campus. But Sophie? She's keeping him at arm's length. That's impressive." Sophie sighed, marking her place in the textbook. "I'm focused, okay? I don't have time for campus drama or billionaire admirers. That's all there is to it." But despite her insistence, Sophie couldn't help but notice how Connor's presence lingered in her thoughts. She remembered the small notebook he had gifted her, a thoughtful, personal gesture that wasn't flashy or over the top. It had made her heart skip a beat, and though she refused to admit it, she appreciated the recognition of her effort and independence. Across the quad, a group of students had formed near the coffee cart, quietly observing the scene at Sophie's stand. Among them was Emma Lee, a second-year business student known for her sharp wit and love for gossip. She leaned toward her friends, speaking just loud enough to be heard. "Have you guys noticed the way Connor Hayes keeps hanging around Sophie Carter? I mean, he's rich, handsome, and could have anyone, yet he keeps coming back to her snack stand," Emma whispered. Her friends exchanged excited glances, whispering among themselves. "Do you think she likes him?" one asked, curiosity dripping from every word. Another added, "I don't know. She seems so focused on school and work, but there's something there, right? He's been so persistent, and she hasn't outright rejected him rudely. That's gotta mean something." Emma's eyes glimmered. "Exactly. And the way she handles him, so independent, so poised, honestly, it's fascinating. I bet Connor's not used to this. Most people would have fallen for him instantly." Back in the lounge, Lily nudged Sophie again. "See? Everyone's talking about it. And honestly, I think you kind of enjoy it, even if you won't admit it." Sophie's cheeks warmed, and she quickly looked back at her textbook, pretending to be engrossed in the numbers on the page. "I do not. I'm completely focused. Stop teasing me." Marcus chuckled. "Sure, Sophie. Totally focused. But let's be honest. You're human. It's flattering to have someone like Connor interested. and I think you secretly like that he respects your boundaries." Sophie pinched the bridge of her nose, trying to maintain her composure. "Okay, fine. Maybe I appreciate the gesture, but that doesn't mean anything else. I'm still not giving in." Meanwhile, Connor was having a different kind of day. Across campus, he met with his friend and mentor Daniel Whitman in one of the quiet cafes near the campus library. Daniel, older, composed, and well-versed in matters of both business and romance, raised an eyebrow as Connor recounted the latest exchanges with Sophie. "So, let me get this straight," Daniel said, leaning back in his chair. "She's rejecting you politely, maintaining her independence, but you keep showing up. And it's working?" Connor nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "It's strange, Daniel. Usually people are either intimidated by my background or flattered into attention. Sophie, she's neither. She's focused, independent, and unafraid to call me out. It's refreshing." Daniel leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Ah, that's exactly why this is interesting. You're not used to persistence being met with respect rather than immediate acceptance. And that, my friend, makes it more captivating." Connor chuckled softly. "I guess, but I don't want to force anything. I want her to see me as normal, I guess. As Connor Hayes, not just some rich kid." Daniel smiled knowingly. "Then let her see it. Be patient, consistent, and thoughtful. Respect her boundaries. That's the key. And trust me, people notice genuine effort. And Sophie Carter is noticing." Back on the quad, whispers continued to swirl around Sophie. Some students admired her independence, others speculated about Connor's intentions. Even faculty members noticed the quiet buzz, as student behavior often reflects subtle dynamics in campus life. The gossip wasn't malicious. It was fueled by curiosity and the human fascination with unexpected pairings. Sophie herself noticed the occasional glances, the whispers that stopped when she approached, and the subtle nudges from friends. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her stand, counting change, and arranging snacks. But in the quiet moments between transactions, she found herself thinking about Connor, about his patience, his genuine gestures, and the way he had acknowledged her effort without condescension. That evening, after a long day of classes and work, Sophie returned to her dorm room, tossing her backpack onto the bed. Lily flopped onto the bed beside her, still buzzing with excitement. "Sophie, you won't believe what I heard today," Lily began, barely able to contain herself. Sophie groaned softly. "What now?" Lily leaned closer. "Connor Hayes apparently asked half the finance faculty students if they thought you'd ever give him a chance. And guess what? Everyone said you'd hold your ground, but he didn't care. He still tried, and you just kept being you. Independent, strong, determined. He's hooked, Sophie. Totally hooked." Sophie couldn't help but laugh softly, a mix of exasperation and reluctant amusement. "Lily, seriously, that's ridiculous." "Ridiculous? Maybe, but also kind of epic," Lily said, grinning. "You've got a billionaire chasing you and you're not bending an inch. That's legendary." Sophie shook her head, smiling faintly. I want to focus on my studies, that's all." Yet as she settled in to review her finance notes, she found her thoughts drifting back to Connor. The way he had given her the notebook, the patient persistence, the respect for her independence, all of it lingered in her mind. She realized that while she wasn't ready to give in, there was something intriguing about him, something that made her curious despite herself. That night, as the city of Toronto glimmered under the soft glow of streetlights and the quiet hum of traffic, Sophie made a silent promise to herself. She would remain focused, independent, and strong. But she would also allow herself to notice the small gestures, the thoughtful acts, and the person behind the wealth and reputation. Connor, on the other hand, returned to his penthouse suite in downtown Toronto, overlooking the sparkling skyline. He smiled as he reviewed his notes about Sophie, the small details she had shared, the moments of quiet connection. He knew that the path ahead would require patience and respect, but he was willing to walk it. The game of love, he realized, was not about conquest, but about understanding, patience, and genuine connection. And so, amidst the golden autumn leaves, the hum of campus life, and the whispers of curious classmates, the story of Sophie Carter and Connor Hayes continued to unfold, an intricate dance of respect, independence, and subtle attraction that promised to captivate everyone watching. The crisp November wind swept across the University of Toronto campus, scattering golden leaves along the walkways. The midterm season had left students fatigued, and the library buzzed with the sound of keyboards clacking, pages turning, and whispers of last-minute group projects. Amidst this academic frenzy, Sophie Carter was finishing her part-time shift at the student snack stand, her hands sore from carrying boxes and arranging freshly baked goods. Connor Hayes, who had promised to meet her after class, was nowhere in sight. Sophie glanced at her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. 6:15 p.m. He had promised 6 p.m., yet the square in front of the main library remained empty. The notes he had left her over the past week, small gestures of care and affection, suddenly felt insignificant. A lump formed in her throat, not from anger, but from the sting of disappointment. Nearby, Lily Thompson, always Sophie's confidant, observed her growing frustration. "Are you waiting for someone?" Lily asked, a hint of concern lacing her voice. "I was supposed to meet Connor," Sophie replied, forcing a calm tone. "But he's not here." Lily frowned, sensing Sophie's unease. "You're upset. You thought he'd show up, right?" Sophie shook her head, swallowing her feelings. "It's not just that. I can't keep pretending I don't care about my own time. I have classes, work, life. If he can't respect that, maybe we're not on the same page." Connor, meanwhile, had been delayed by an unforeseen meeting with a potential business partner, a rare occasion that demanded his immediate attention. He glanced at his phone, noticing multiple messages from Sophie, some of them unanswered. Panic surged through him. He had intended to surprise her with tickets to a charity gala that evening, an opportunity she had always wanted to attend. As he rushed through the downtown streets, the Toronto skyline lit by the golden hues of sunset, Connor's mind raced. He had thought patience and persistence would be enough to win Sophie's heart. But he realized that life's unpredictability could create fractures even in the most carefully nurtured connections. Back at the snack stand, Sophie's frustration began to boil. Her independence and discipline had always been her anchors, yet she couldn't ignore the disappointment gnawing at her. The final transaction of the evening ended, and she began packing her things, preparing to head back to her dormitory. The quiet rustle of leaves outside mirrored the turbulence inside her heart. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from Connor appeared. "Sophie, I'm so sorry. I got caught up. Can we meet later?" Sophie's thumb hovered over the screen, her finger trembling slightly. After a long pause, she typed a single word. "Enough." She didn't press send immediately. Her heart urged her to give him the benefit of the doubt, but years of self-reliance and her pride as a student forced her hand. She hit send, and the phone slipped from her fingers onto the counter. Connor's arrival moments later was met with a tense silence. Sophie stood firmly, arms crossed, her gaze unwavering. "Connor," she said, her voice steady despite the storm within, "I can't do this anymore." Connor's eyes widened, shock written across his face. "Sophie, You don't understand," Sophie interrupted. "I've been patient, I've been understanding, and I've made time for you. But your actions, they don't match your words. You keep promising, but life keeps interfering. I can't keep waiting for a man who can't prioritize me even for a moment. Connor took a step forward, reaching for her hand. Sophie, wait. It's not what you think. I had to. No, Sophie exclaimed, stepping back. I don't want excuses anymore. I care about you, I really do, but this isn't working. I can't let myself be disappointed again. The snack stand suddenly felt too small, too confining, and Sophie's gaze shifted to the rows of snacks she had meticulously arranged. Each box, each item, was a reminder of her independence, her hard work, and the life she had built for herself. She couldn't let it be overshadowed by the uncertainties of Connor's world, a world full of wealth, power, and obligations she couldn't possibly compete with. Connor's heart pounded in his chest. He had never felt so powerless. No amount of wealth, no charm, no persistence could undo the chasm that had suddenly opened between them. Sophie, please, don't do this, he said, voice strained. Sophie shook her head, tears threatening to spill but held back by sheer will. I'm doing this because I respect myself, Connor. I need to focus on my future, on my studies, on my life. I can't live in a constant cycle of disappointment. She turned, grabbing her backpack and heading toward the dorms, each step heavy but resolute. Connor stood frozen, watching the girl he had admired, chased, and loved walk away from him, not in anger but with calm determination. The emotional weight of the breakup hung thick in the air, palpable to anyone who might have witnessed the scene. That evening, Sophie sat in her dorm room, the warm glow of her desk lamp illuminating her textbooks. The sound of the city outside was distant, almost like a soft lullaby against her racing thoughts. She reflected on the past few weeks, the moments of connection, the subtle gestures, the thrill of attention from someone like Connor. And yet, she realized that independence and self-respect were worth more than fleeting romance. Lily arrived at her dorm, a small tray of snacks in hand. I brought you something, she said softly, setting it down beside Sophie. Sophie smiled faintly, her mind still tangled in emotions. Thanks, Lily. I think I made the right choice. You did, Lily said firmly. You have to look out for yourself first. Connor will have to learn that if he wants to be with someone like you, he has to show up, not just in words, but in actions. Meanwhile, Connor returned to his penthouse suite, the Toronto skyline glittering below. He replayed the day in his mind, the missed opportunities, the words unsaid, and the disappointment in Sophie's eyes. The breakup was a harsh lesson. Persistence without understanding, affection without presence, and promises without fulfillment could fracture even the strongest connections. Connor sank into his leather armchair, staring at the skyline. He realized that wealth and power were meaningless if they couldn't bridge the human gaps created by time, attention, and sincerity. Sophie's rejection was not a failure, but a mirror, reflecting the very areas he needed to grow in: patience, respect, and emotional presence. Over the next few days, gossip on campus grew. Students speculated about the sudden disappearance of Connor from Sophie's daily life. Some assumed she had moved on. Others whispered about an irreparable rift. Sophie, immersed in her studies and work, rarely engaged in conversation about Connor. Her friends, however, supported her decisions, reinforcing the idea that self-respect and independence were paramount. Connor, on the other hand, faced an unexpected challenge. He had to confront his own shortcomings: time management, attentiveness, and the realization that money and charm could not solve every problem. He began crafting a plan, not to win back Sophie through grand gestures, but to demonstrate sincere growth and genuine commitment. The campus continued to bustle, but for Connor and Sophie, the world had shifted. One simple missed meeting had escalated into a breakup, creating emotional ripples that neither would soon forget. And yet, beneath the pain and frustration, a deeper understanding began to take root, one that would eventually set the stage for reconciliation, trust, and a more mature connection. In the quiet of her dorm room, Sophie allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She acknowledged her feelings for Connor but reaffirmed her priorities. She would not compromise her independence, her studies, or her self-respect. Love, she realized, required both presence and sincerity, and until that balance was achieved, it was not worth the emotional cost. Connor, in his penthouse, made a silent vow. He would prove himself, not through wealth, grand gestures, or persistence alone, but through genuine effort, understanding, and unwavering respect. He had learned a hard lesson. Love without action and presence was meaningless. And Sophie Carter deserved nothing less than his full attention and commitment. The breakup, while painful, marked a turning point. It was the emotional crucible that would forge their characters, deepen their understanding, and ultimately set the stage for a reunion built on sincerity, growth, and mutual respect. The first snow of December dusted the University of Toronto campus with a soft white blanket, lending a magical hush to the bustling streets. Students hurried between buildings, their scarves and mittens wrapped tightly against the cold, while the warm glow from cafe windows invited a brief reprieve from the chill. Amid this wintry scene, Sophie Carter walked briskly across the campus, balancing a stack of finance textbooks and her laptop case. Her steps were purposeful, her mind consumed by midterms and final assignments. Yet, despite the academic focus, the memory of her breakup with Connor Hayes lingered, a dull ache beneath the surface. She had thrown herself into her studies and part-time work at the campus snack stand, channeling her disappointment into productivity and independence. Each tray of muffins, every carefully arranged snack, was a small triumph, proof that she could thrive without relying on anyone else's presence or promises. Meanwhile, Connor had not been idle. Over the past few weeks, he had reflected deeply on the mistakes that had led to the breakup. Wealth and charm had never been enough. He realized that his own inconsistency and lack of attentiveness had caused Sophie to doubt his sincerity. Connor committed himself to change, not through grand gestures meant to impress, but through deliberate, tangible actions that would demonstrate his respect, care, and understanding. He started small. Every evening he would spend hours at Sophie's snack stand, anonymously delivering supplies and paying off bills for equipment, ensuring her work was easier and more efficient. He attended her academic seminars, quietly taking notes and learning alongside her. He tutored underprivileged students as a way to develop empathy, and he even enrolled in a time management workshop to ensure he could balance his business obligations with personal commitments. The day of their reunion began like any other winter morning. Sophie was at the snack stand, setting up freshly baked pastries and hot chocolate, her breath forming small clouds in the frosty air. Connor approached from the street, hands buried in the pockets of his thick winter coat. His breath visible in the cold, he looked more determined than charming, more sincere than affluent. Sophie noticed him immediately but continued her work, pretending not to. She had learned that keeping her independence and composure was essential. Connor stopped a few feet away, clearing his throat. "Sophie," he began, his voice calm yet earnest. "Can we talk?" Sophie glanced at him, her expression guarded. "About what?" she asked, not letting herself betray any curiosity. "About us," Connor said, taking a small step closer. "I've spent the past few weeks thinking about what went wrong, about my actions, and about you. I realize now that I hurt you, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't show up in the way you needed me to." Sophie paused, her hands resting on the counter. She wanted to believe him, but skepticism lingered. "You could have learned that in the past. What makes today different?" Connor pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket. "Because today, I want to show you, not just tell you. I've made a plan to support you, to be present for you, and to respect your independence. No excuses, no games, just honesty and effort." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "Go on." He handed her the envelope. Inside were vouchers for tutoring sessions, gift cards for groceries and snacks for her stand, and tickets to a seminar she had always wanted to attend on financial entrepreneurship. "I've thought about the things that matter to you," Connor said. "I want to be part of your life, without overshadowing your independence. I want to earn your trust again, step by step." Sophie's heart fluttered, but her expression remained steady. She took a deep breath, weighing his sincerity. "And if I say no?" she asked, testing the strength of his resolve. Connor smiled softly. "Then I continue to respect your choice and give you space. But I hope that over time, you'll see that my actions speak louder than words." For a moment, silence settled between them. The snow continued to fall gently, covering the campus in white serenity. Then, in a quiet, firm voice, Sophie said, "All right, Connor. Let's see if actions really do speak louder than words." From that day forward, their relationship shifted from flirtation and fleeting gestures to mutual respect, shared effort, and emotional transparency. Connor continued to help at Sophie's snack stand, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely enjoyed seeing her succeed and wanted to ease her burden. Sophie, in turn, allowed herself to trust him gradually, observing consistency over time. Campus life carried on around them, with students speculating quietly about their renewed bond. Gossip became admiration as people saw Connor's dedication, not in lavish gifts, but in thoughtful, practical support. Sophie's classmates began to recognize that she had not compromised her independence. Instead, Connor had adjusted to meet her on equal footing. One afternoon, as Sophie prepared her final exams, Connor arrived at her dorm with a carefully wrapped package. "I know how hard you've been working," he said. "This is something small to keep you motivated." Sophie unwrapped it to find a notebook personalized with her name, filled with motivational quotes and study tips he had compiled over weeks of observation. At the bottom, a small note read, "Your dedication inspires me every day. Keep shining, Sophie. I'll be here, supporting you, always." Sophie's eyes glistened with tears, but she smiled genuinely. "Thank you, Connor. This means more than you know." As the semester drew to a close, Sophie's hard work paid off. She aced her exams and received recognition for her efforts, earning a scholarship for the upcoming term. Connor celebrated quietly, proud not of wealth or status, but of Sophie's perseverance and growth. Their bond deepened further through shared experiences. They volunteered at local student initiatives, attended workshops, and even co-hosted study sessions for younger students. The campus buzzed with admiration, not for romance alone, but for the partnership they had nurtured. A relationship built on respect, effort, and shared values. Winter soon gave way to the first hints of spring, and with it, the campus erupted in celebration of achievements and milestones. Sophie's snack stand flourished, now supported by Connor's discreet financial assistance, and her reputation as an independent, capable student became solidified. Connor, once a symbol of wealth and privilege, became known for his sincerity, effort, and respect for those around him. The pinnacle of their journey came on Sophie's birthday. Connor arranged a small gathering at a cozy cafe near campus, inviting only close friends. As Sophie entered, she was met with warmth and laughter. Connor stepped forward, presenting her with a handcrafted gift, a scrapbook chronicling their journey together, filled with photos, notes, and mementos from the past months. "I wanted to show you," he said softly, "that love is not about grand gestures or fleeting moments. It's about presence, consistency, and understanding. I hope this reflects that." Sophie opened the scrapbook, her eyes misting with tears. Each page told a story of growth, patience, and genuine connection. "Connor, this is incredible," she whispered. He took her hand, his eyes steady and sincere. "Sophie Carter, will you continue this journey with me? Not as someone to save, not as someone to chase, but as a partner, equal in every way?" Sophie smiled, tears spilling freely now. "Yes, I believe in us, Connor. I believe in what we've built together." The cafe erupted in applause, but for Connor and Sophie, the moment was intimate and profound. They had navigated misunderstandings, broken promises, and personal growth, arriving at a place where love was no longer about infatuation, but about trust, effort, and shared values. As the semester ended, Sophie's academic achievements earned her praise and admiration, while Connor's efforts to support and respect her independence became a lesson in sincerity and partnership for all who knew them. The campus buzzed with the story of their reunion, not as a tale of dramatic romance, but as a testament to perseverance, maturity, and the transformative power of genuine connection. By the time spring fully blossomed, Sophie and Connor had established a balance between love and independence. Their journey, fraught with challenges and growth, became a viral sensation among their peers. The story was shared widely, not because of wealth or superficial charm, but because it resonated with anyone who had ever valued sincerity, effort, and mutual respect in relationships. In the end, their reunion was more than a romantic resolution. It was a lesson in human connection, a blueprint for balancing independence and intimacy, and a narrative that inspired admiration and discussion across the campus and beyond. Sophie smiled as she walked across the sunlit campus, Connor by her side, the soft spring breeze carrying the promise of new beginnings. They had learned that love was not about instant perfection, but about shared effort, understanding, and unwavering support. And that was a story worth sharing. He replayed the day in his mind, the missed opportunities, the words unsaid, and the disappointment in Sophie's eyes. The breakup was a harsh lesson. Persistence without understanding, affection without presence, and promises without fulfillment could fracture even the strongest connections. Connor sank into his leather armchair, staring at the skyline. He realized that wealth and power were meaningless if they couldn't bridge the human gaps created by time, attention, and sincerity. Sophie's rejection was not a failure, but a mirror, reflecting the very areas he needed to grow in: patience, respect, and emotional presence. Over the next few days, gossip on campus grew. Students speculated about the sudden disappearance of Connor from Sophie's daily life. Some assumed she had moved on, others whispered about an irreparable rift. Sophie, immersed in her studies and work, rarely engaged in conversation about Connor. Her friends, however, supported her decisions, reinforcing the idea that self-respect and independence were paramount. Connor, on the other hand, faced an unexpected challenge. He had to confront his own shortcomings: time management, attentiveness, and the realization that money and charm could not solve every problem. He began crafting a plan, not to win back Sophie through grand gestures, but to demonstrate sincere growth and genuine commitment. The campus continued to bustle, but for Connor and Sophie, the world had shifted. One simple missed meeting had escalated into a breakup, creating emotional ripples that neither would soon forget. And yet, beneath the pain and frustration, a deeper understanding began to take root, one that would eventually set the stage for reconciliation, trust, and a more mature connection. In the quiet of her dorm room, Sophie allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She acknowledged her feelings for Connor but reaffirmed her priorities. She would not compromise her independence, her studies, or her self-respect. Love, she realized, required both presence and sincerity, and until that balance was achieved, it was not worth the emotional cost. Connor, in his penthouse, made a silent vow. He would prove himself, not through wealth, grand gestures, or persistence alone, but through genuine effort, understanding, and unwavering respect. He had learned a hard lesson. Love without action and presence was meaningless, and Sophie Carter deserved nothing less than his full attention and commitment. The breakup, while painful, marked a turning point. It was the emotional crucible that would forge their characters, deepen their understanding, and ultimately set the stage for a reunion built on sincerity, growth, and mutual respect. The first snow of December dusted the University of Toronto campus with a soft white blanket, lending a magical hush to the bustling streets. Students hurried between buildings, their scarves and mittens wrapped tightly against the cold, while the warm glow from cafe windows invited a brief reprieve from the chill. Amid this wintry scene, Sophie Carter walked briskly across the campus, balancing a stack of finance textbooks and her laptop case. Her steps were purposeful, her mind consumed by midterms and final assignments. Yet, despite the academic focus, the memory of her breakup with Connor Hayes lingered, a dull ache beneath the surface. She had thrown herself into her studies and part-time work at the campus snack stand, channeling her disappointment into productivity and independence. Each tray of muffins, every carefully arranged snack, was a small triumph, proof that she could thrive without relying on anyone else's presence or promises. Meanwhile, Connor had not been idle. Over the past few weeks, he had reflected deeply on the mistakes that had led to the breakup. Wealth and charm had never been enough. He realized that his own inconsistency and lack of attentiveness had caused Sophie to doubt his sincerity. Connor committed himself to change, not through grand gestures meant to impress, but through deliberate, tangible actions that would demonstrate his respect, care, and understanding. He started small. Every evening, he would spend hours at Sophie's snack stand, anonymously delivering supplies and paying off bills for equipment, ensuring her work was easier and more efficient. He attended her academic seminars, quietly taking notes and learning alongside her. He tutored underprivileged students as a way to develop empathy, and he even enrolled in a time management workshop to ensure he could balance his business obligations with personal commitments. The day of their reunion began like any other winter morning. Sophie was at the snack stand, setting up freshly baked pastries and hot chocolate, her breath forming small clouds in the frosty air. Connor approached from the street, hands buried in the pockets of his thick winter coat. His breath visible in the cold, he looked more determined than charming, more sincere than affluent.